Sarah Langford was the kind of nurse every patient wished for. Gentle but confident, attentive yet quick on her feet. At 26, she had already earned a reputation at St. David's General Hospital as the one who could calm the screaming drunk at 3 a.m. or coax a smile from a frightened child waiting for stitches. She lived alone in a modest, tidy home in the suburbs, a place she chose for its quiet streets, leafy sidewalks, and the feeling that trouble belonged somewhere else. 10 months earlier, she'd met Daniel Reed at a photography exhibit downtown. Daniel was 34, a freelance photographer who made his living shooting glossy spreads for magazines and the occasional wedding. He was tall, lean, with eyes that seemed to hold secrets and a voice that made even casual conversations sound intimate. Sarah's friends liked him well enough, though some hinted that he seemed closed off and a little intense. Sarah brushed it off. She was used to people misunderstanding those with complex personalities. Friday, April 14th, began like any other shift at the hospital. Sarah clocked out at 1:30 p.m., exhausted but smiling. Daniel had texted earlier, inviting her over for a late lunch. By 2:10 p.m., her small silver hatchback rolled into his cul-de-sac. The only person who noticed was Mrs. Gladys Porter, Daniel's elderly neighbor, who sat by her living room window with a crossword puzzle and a pot of tea. At exactly 2:15 p.m., she saw Sarah walk up the driveway, ring the bell, and step inside. Mrs. Porter didn't know it then, but she was the last living person outside that house to see Sarah alive. What happened inside Daniel's home over the next few hours remains a patchwork of forensic evidence and chilling speculation. Neighbors later reported hearing muffled shouting, a loud thud, and what sounded like furniture being moved. By 4:30 p.m., Daniel emerged, his hair damp and his shirt changed. He carried 2 large, battered suitcases, dark green and scuffed from years of use, and heaved them into the back of his dark blue SUV. He didn't glance toward Mrs. Porter's window. He didn't wave. He just got in, started the engine, and drove away. At 5:47 p.m., on Highway 16, Daniel was stopped at a routine police checkpoint. The stop should have been quick, license, registration, and on your way. But one officer, glancing into the back seat, noticed something odd. A faint, reddish smear along the zipper seam of one suitcase. When asked about it, Daniel's tone changed. His answers were clipped, his gaze evasive. The officer requested permission to search the vehicle. Daniel hesitated for just a second too long. When the zippers were pulled open, the checkpoint became the scene of a nightmare. Inside, wrapped in plastic and duct tape, were human remains, dismembered into multiple sections. It was Sarah. The autopsy was grim. Sarah had suffered severe blunt force trauma to the head, consistent with multiple blows. Defensive wounds on her arms and hands told the story of a desperate struggle. Blood traces were found in Daniel's bedroom, on the bed frame, and along the hallway carpet. A hacksaw in his garage bore both her blood and hair. When questioned, Daniel claimed Sarah had fallen down the stairs and died instantly. In a panic, he said, he decided to hide her body rather than face accusations. But the forensic timeline dismantled his version. Sarah had been alive well after the alleged fall, and her injuries were consistent with an attack, not an accident. The trial gripped the city. Prosecutors painted Daniel as a man whose charm masked deep insecurities and violent jealousy. They presented text messages from Sarah to a friend, sent just days before her death. "I think I need some space from Daniel. He's been intense lately." The defense tried to soften the narrative, portraying Daniel as a panicked man making terrible decisions in the wake of tragedy. But the jury wasn't convinced. The calculated dismemberment, the hurried departure, the lies, it all pointed to intent. Daniel Reed was found guilty of first-degree murder and sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. In the months that followed, Sarah's suburban street became a quiet place of mourning. Neighbors left flowers on her porch. Mrs. Porter, now burdened with the memory of that last glimpse, often stared at the empty driveway, haunted by the image of Sarah's warm smile as she walked toward the door that would not let her out again. Sarah's colleagues at St. David's keep a framed photo of her at the nurse's station, a reminder of the woman who poured so much care into others, only to meet a fate so chilling it still echoes through the city's collective memory.